Hello, Melina. Pia.
Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Mr. Chris.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
I'm seeing you now. Hello, everyone. I see there's a few people here. Pia, are you going to run the slides or shall I do it from here?
I think our team can run the slide. Mbak Gigi, can you run the slide, please, for us?
Miss Raina will help Mr. Chris to run the slides.
Excellent. Okay, I think we can start it, Raina.
All right. I will share the screen, okay?
How is the weather in Malang today?
Okay. Can you speak Indonesia, Mr. Chris? Can you speak Indonesia?
I have only been through the
Just a little,
Bali.
maybe. Just a little.
Oh.
Selamat pagi.
Selamat pagi, yeah, definitely.
Ya,
You'll
selamat
see some of that in the
pagi.
slides.
Salam sejahtera. Gitu.
Yes.
Salam sehat.
You'll see a Javanese sentence in my slides.
Yeah, I saw that.
Google Translate is a wonderful thing. So I would like to learn some words. Okay, are we waiting for the slides to come up?
Okay, Raina, you can start to open the webinar.
All right.
Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good morning. We are delighted to welcome you to the general lecture of postgraduate program in communication science. Good morning, the Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Science, Mr. Solih Muadi, and Mr. Anthony as a head of communication department, Mr. Rahmat Kriantono as a head of postgraduate program, and of course, Dr. Christopher Galloway from Massey University, New Zealand, and also participants of Faculty of Social and Political Science, Brawijaya University.
I'm honored to have a chance to speak to you all.
All right. Okay, before we go further, let me introduce myself first. My name is Raina Sasin, and I will be your Master of Ceremony today. And it's such an honor to welcome you here in this special event. And before we enter the main session, I will read out the agenda that we have in this morning. The first is opening speech by the Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Science. The second is lecturing session. The third is question and answer with audience. And the last one will be closing and photo session. And the topic that we will discuss in this event is about getting attention in a COVID chaotic world, digital approaches, and more. This event provides a great opportunity for prospective participants to share their recent theoretical knowledge, research finding, and experiences in dealing with COVID world in digital approaches and more. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to listen to the opening speech delivered by the Dean of Faculty of Social and Political Science. Please welcome Mr. Solih Muadi.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In the name of Allah, the most benefit, the most merciful. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi. The head of Secretary of Department, the postgraduate director of Communication Science, and the lecturer in the Faculty of Social and Political Science, Universitas Brawijaya. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome Professor Dr. Christopher Galloway from Massey University, New Zealand, also the new student from Master of Communication Science, Faculty of Social and Political Science. I am very grateful to you all for taking time off from your busy schedule to attend this inaugural lecture with the theme is creating attention in COVID words, digital approaches, and more with distinguished speaks Professor Galloway. The event is a part of Merdeka Belajar Kampus Merdeka program, with initiative from Ministry of Education and Culture of the Republic of Indonesia. MBKM program is not only inviting scholars from other universities, both national or international, to give a lecture, but also the enching or participate, especially in the international education accreditation. At this moment, I hope this event can be a great step for Department of Communication Science to purpose international accreditation, namely accrediting council and mass communication in 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, if my quote from the Prophet Muhammad, acquire knowledge and impart into the people. The quest for knowledge has been from the beginning of time, but knowledge only become valuable when it is disseminated and applied to benefit humankind. It is evident that the intellectual discourse will result in future collaboration between university, research institution, and industry both locally. This aspect that focus will be given to issue on media, communication, and social change. I hope this from could facilitate the exchange of ideas and knowledge, all of which lead to the development of our global community. Like mutual partnership between Faculty of Social and Political Science, University Brawijaya, and Massey University, New Zealand. Finally, I would like to congratulate the organization community for their tremendous effort is organization this event. I also hope that this event can also be start to academic cooperation and collaboration between us. Thank you. Good day for all of us. Stay safe and healthy. Billahi taufiq walidahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua, khususnya untuk Mr. Christopher. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Solimwadi, for the amazing opening speech. And we are now continuing to the main session. That is to hear the keynote speech, which will be delivered by Dr. Christopher Galloway from Massey University, New Zealand. And the keynote speech will be moderated by Mrs. Isma Adila. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Christopher Galloway and Ms. Isma Adila.
Mr. Raina, saya meninggalkan tempat dulu ya. Harus mengajar. Salam for Chris Galloway. Thank you.
Terima kasih Pak Dekan, matur nuwun sangat atas waktunya.
Political Science, Universitas Brawijaya, Christo Galloway. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you very
Saya
much.
meninggalkan Zoom dulu karena harus ada kegiatan ngajar hari ini. Terima kasih.
Matur nuwun Pak Dekan.
Ya, terima kasih untuk Mbak Pia dan juga Mas RK dan juga Pak Antoni. Hadir Pak Antoni ya. Oke, terima kasih untuk semuanya. Terima kasih Bu Pia inisiasi dan mudah-mudahan kita semua salam sehat untuk semuanya ya. Ini saya ada rapat hari ini. Double. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Mbak Isma juga ini yang saya sebut tadi. Terima kasih. Sukses ya nanti jadi moderator. Terima kasih. Saya live ya.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Christopher Galloway and Mrs. Isma Adila.
Thank you, Raina, for the introduction. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable, the Head of Postgraduate Communication, all the lecturers, Ibu Maulina Pia Wulandari, and all the students from Communication Department, and all the participants. My name is Isma Adila. I will be conducting today's general lecture. I'm very pleased to see you here. Welcome all of you to this seminar. Today's seminar topic is getting attention in a COVID chaotic world, the digital approaches and more. And today I am very delighted welcoming our speaker today, Dr. Christopher Galloway from Massey University, New Zealand. He is a senior lecturer from School of Communication and Journalism and Marketing. Good morning, Dr. Chris Galloway. Kia ora.
Well done. Well done. Thank you.
Am I pronouncing it well?
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay. Today, Dr. Galloway will mostly talk about the COVID-19 as COVID-19 ravages countries around the world, and we all know that it is hard to stand out. And it's always been challenging to attract people's attention, especially in the face of what we call as infodemic, a large data that often overwhelms our ability to handle it. So what to do, given that a new normal that is elusive, this presentation will propose some answer to that question. Before the presentation begin, let me inform how the presentation will be going on. First, we will invite Dr. Galloway to present the material, and after that, we will have Q&A session, and it will followed by a conclusion. And now allow me to welcome the speaker to deliver his presentation. Dr. Galloway, the time is yours.
Terima kasih. In one of the hadith, the Prophet, peace be upon him, says, whoever teaches some knowledge will have the reward of the one who acts upon it without that detracting from his reward in the slightest. So I'm privileged to be with colleagues who are involved in teaching and learning as I am. So thank you very much for joining me for this session. It's just great. Please move to the next slide. So you've heard the topic, and I will be unpacking that as we go along. Although we've allowed time for questions at the end, if anyone in particular would like to ask something as we go along, I'm okay with that. So Raina, can we move along, please? I hope I got the Javanese correct there. If not, just blame Google. So moving along, well, you will see the Bismillah there in Arabic, of course. And I'm convinced, as I hope you are, that in the midst of the global COVID crisis, we can hold on to the fact that the Almighty remains in control. Let's keep moving on. So here's a list of what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what's called the attention economy. We're going to talk about COVID's effect on attention, what that means for the messaging that we as communicators develop, how to deal with resistance and roadblocks to reception of our messaging. We know and understand that this is true in Indonesia, as well as elsewhere, that when people are seeking to persuade the citizens to take the right self-protective actions in regard to COVID infection, that there is some resistance, some even from people who deny the existence of the virus, some who are worried about getting vaccinated and so on. So we will talk about that. And finally, we'll talk also about how in this chaotic environment, universities like Brawijaya can stand out. So that's the agenda. Please move on. So that's just a nifty little slide showing the some of the different elements of the attention economy, but I'm going to unpack for you what I mean by that term. So next slide, please. What all of us face is what someone has called industrialized adversarial persuasion. And this has particularly come to the fore in recent developments with Facebook and Google, when Facebook dared to stand up to the Australian government and withdraw its news feeds for about a week until the two parties were able to come together. We have the massive power exerted in communication around the world by tech giants like Facebook and like Google, and that's why this term industrialized adversarial persuasion. And much of it is actually driven by new artificially intelligence-powered measurement technologies. You will have heard of Google Analytics and Facebook equivalent, all sorts of other engines that enable people like the Googles of this world and Facebook to very minutely target the audiences that they want to reach, and to sell that ability for micro-targeting to companies that are willing to pay, of course, big dollars for doing that. Let's move on. So there's a question, why do people, especially businesses, want to attract attention? I guess it's pretty obvious. They want to make money out of your attention. It is all about attracting eyeballs and ears. And yet sometimes we don't stop to think about the fact that our attention is possibly the most monetized, most valuable economic attribute that we have today. And one of the issues is that we face, someone referred to earlier to the infodemic, we face such a deluge of data. How do we deal with it? Let me just check in for a minute and ask, how are we going? Is everyone hearing this okay? This is all right? Okay, let's move on. Now, the guy who wrote this has written a whole book on attention. He's an international marketing specialist, and this is what he had to say. Ideas that are allocated no attention can have no impact. So I guess that's self-evident, but if you do not pay attention to something, it's not affecting you at all. I usually ask my students, pose a question to my students and say, if I was to announce to you that the university was going to increase its fees next year by 10%, would I have your attention? And of course, they all say, yes, absolutely, you would. And then I go on to say, now, if I was to ask you about the problem of piracy off the Horn of Africa, would I have your attention? And the answer is, of course, no, because it's something that is far, far away. So we tend to pay attention to those things, those developments that we consider likely to have or are actually having a direct impact on us. And Jacob correctly identifies that attention to an issue or a cause is necessary to effect any change through communication. Please continue. Next slide. So you'll see there a quote from an author who's saying that he's written a book called The Attention Merchants, Tim Wu. And he's talking about how the people who created Google and Facebook ended up with what he calls the world's most sophisticated machinery for converting attention into cash. And we know, if we stop to think about it, that people like Google and Facebook have very sophisticated and complicated ways of tracking what we do. There are, of course, browsers such as DuckDuckGo and Brave that do not track you. And you can get heavily encrypted email services where you are not tracked. But I've tried DuckDuckGo, for example, and although its results are not bad, they are not as good as those that I can get from Google. So my default position becomes Google. And of course, Google is making money out of tracking my behavior online. Please move to the next slide. So here's a widely cited quote by Herbert Simon. A wealth of information, think about that deluge of data I was talking about a minute or so ago, creates a poverty of attention. And that's because each of us has only so many attentional resources. And when we are faced with messaging coming at us from all directions, we can only attend seriously or in a dedicated way to a certain proportion of it. So we need to make rational decisions as to how we allocate our attention. We need, as Simon says, to allocate that attention efficiently. Okay, please move on. Hope this is making sense to you. Now, how long is your attention span? In 2013, Microsoft Canada came out with what it called research, although the nature and quality of the research was much debated afterwards, saying that in digital environments, people's attention spans averaged around 8 seconds, which it claimed was 1 second less than that of the average goldfish. I'm really not quite sure how you determine the attention span of a goldfish. But the point is that people's attention spans in digital environments are not very long at all. And one survey I came across suggested that 19% of website visitors were gone inside 10 seconds if they didn't find what they were looking for. Now, there are exceptions. I had a student when I was talking about this who said to me, well, I was up until the early hours of this morning playing video games. So if you're a video game addict, you might be able to be so drawn into the world of the game that you can spend hours playing it and watching it. But for most of us, as we check our emails on our phones, stream televisions, programs online, or whatever else we do, we are making decisions all the time about what we will pay attention to. And the challenge for communicators is how to influence people through those, fragmented and sometimes fleeting attentional resources. Next slide, please. So a question for you, if you were texting or on social media, how would I go about getting your attention, or could I even do that? I'd be interested to know what anyone in the audience would like to tell me about that. If you were on social media, hooked into it, updating your status, doing whatever you do, could I actually get your attention? If anyone would like to respond to that, I'm happy to pause for a minute. I'll take that as a no. Thank you, Rana. Let's please move on. By the way, is my pace all right? Am I speaking too fast, too slow, or about right? It's okay?
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
Thank you. I hope this is making sense as we go along. So many of us spend a lot of time every day on our screens. Sometimes I've found a student in my class in the back of the room on their phone and working on Facebook, and I've walked up to them and said, just update your status by telling them that you're in this fantastic class. But screens override natural attention spans because they're able to keep re-grabbing attention. Once you have responded to one Facebook post, then there's a temptation to scroll through the other posts that have come into you, respond to them, and that's this re-grabbing thing that the author is talking about. It doesn't give people the time to process properly what they're looking at. I tell my students that those who write notes in their laptops are fine, but if they handwrite notes, they will have a better recall of what is being said, because to do that, you have to process the information somewhat rather than just doing a transcript. So moving on, please. So I'm sorry, that picture is all of Western young people. I couldn't find one of Indonesians, but it's said that millennials check phones 150 times a day at least. One of the issues with that, particularly for us as students and educators, is that it can take a number of minutes after you are distracted to return to what you were working on before. In fact, one study suggests that after we're interrupted, it can take as long as 23 minutes for us to achieve the focus that we had before. Let's move on. So what happens in the attention economy is that we are presented with a trigger, so-called clickbait. Some kind of crazy way out question or opportunity is presented to us. We then are sucked into paying attention to that, and we are going after a reward, and it is trying to monetize our attention, like something I saw earlier in the day saying, oh, you've qualified to get a new Samsung phone. Now, who wouldn't like one of those for $1? But I didn't push on with that because I had questions about it. But this is one way that businesses make money from you and I through monetizing our attention. Let's carry on. This is some data as to how Indonesians use apps, and this data is the most recent I could find from 2019, and it's not the complete chart. But what it shows is that there is heavy use of apps, particularly of chat apps and social networking apps. All right, we'll carry on. One of the things that I'm hot on in talking to my colleagues is the designing communication for distribution via mobile devices. And the statistic here is one of the reasons why. But the average visitor stays on a news site for about 3 minutes. There was a survey of American smartphone users I came across, and of course it wouldn't necessarily apply in either Indonesia or New Zealand. But in America, the survey was showing that not only did people leave news sites very quickly, but when it came to long form content, which was defined as up to 1,000 words, they engaged with that content only for about 123 seconds. In other words, just very slightly over 2 minutes. So when we are designing messages, we need to be aware of these shrinking attention spans and work to capture people's attention in what it must be a very short space of time. Please carry on. So a question for us is, we talk in English about paying attention, often without stopping to think about what is the opportunity cost. If you are sitting at your computer all night playing a game, what else could you have been doing that might have been perhaps more healthy? Like playing football or basketball or whatever, hanging out with friends. What is the opportunity cost? Is a question that's worth considering. Please go to the next slide. So you might get the impression that we are simply subject to manipulation by the big tech giants and others who are seeking to persuade and influence us. But of course, communication students and scholars know that audiences are not merely passive. We look at a message or consider a message and then decide whether to accept or reject it, particularly in view of what we already know or believe about a subject. So the kind of persuasion that happens, the kind of messaging that we are faced with every day is not necessarily going to result in behavior change or attitudinal change. And there's, of course, no direct link between attitude change and behavior change. But we do need to acknowledge that the persuasion engines that we deal with day by day are pretty powerful. Please move on. One way of getting attention is to disrupt the audience's expectations. I like to joke, I guess, that my teaching philosophy is a surprise one, because I like to say that I don't want the students ever to feel that they know exactly what's going to be coming up next in my classes. I like to keep them guessing where I can. So little statements like these are ones that make you stop and think. They're different from what you might expect. So one way to get attention and to get it quickly is to disrupt what the audience thinks is going to happen, or thinks that something that you want to talk about is actually what you're on about. Such as that sign up there that says, "Haters wanted, my old ones are starting to like me." Now there's humor there, of course, but the sign "haters wanted" gets your attention. It certainly got mine. Please move on. Now, one of the things that I firmly believe when it comes to attracting attention, digital media are not always the answer. If you're thinking in terms of public relations activity, things like stunts and events can also get attention. So not everything needs to be driven by digital means, but increasingly more and more does. Please move on. And it's not just about words. Images, the human brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. And looking at these two photos, I'm scared for the guy on the rope on the left and would be very frightened to meet the snake on the right. New Zealand, you may or may not know, is a country without any snakes whatsoever. In fact, even zoos in New Zealand are not allowed to import them to display them to the public. So images also make an impact super fast. Let's move on. So why do these stand out? Again, they stand out because they disrupt people's expectations. Look at the kampong on the left, which I understand is somewhere in the Malang area. Can anyone confirm that for me? That's in Malang?
Yes,
Right.
in Malang. It is in Malang.
Good. Well, to me, it stands out because of the use of color. And of course, sometime I hope to be able to see it or visit it. On the right as well, it's a richness, a density of color. So things like colors can grab our attention as well. Please move on. And by the way, one reason why the kampong works to attract attention is just people do not expect multicolored villages like that one. Now, I talked to you about how people take in information visually far faster than text. So a diagram like this one may convey information far faster than words alone. Let's keep moving, please. If you're speaking to an audience, this is true as well. I don't know how many of you do public speaking. The lecturers and educators amongst you will, of course. And the little graph on the right talks about how when you start, audience attention can be high, then it dips, goes right down and goes up at the end when people are looking forward to a conclusion. One of the things that I operate on when I think about lecturing is that, and this is not a way of putting students down, but I consider that a student's attention span is roughly the length of 2 music videos, so about 7 or 8 minutes. And every 7 or 8 minutes, I need to move the student's attention to something else to maintain their attention and avoid the situation where their attentional resources are so depleted that they just kind of turn off. Next slide, please. So it's our job, I believe, to understand the best we can what will motivate our audiences and how to move them in our desired direction with strategic messaging. And messaging, of course, is, as I've been saying, not just words. It is also images that support the intent that we want to have behind our communication. Next slide, Raina, please. So the key thing is know your audience, and I can't repeat that often enough. I've been talking to some students about that today, and we use things like qualitative research, online sentiment analysis, and other analytical tools. If we're running a customer-facing business, we can learn from what customers tell us through our customer contact center. We can learn what people think about us and where there might be emerging issues through doing environmental scanning, where we're looking at what kind of political, economic, social, technological, legal, or environmental concerns might be out there that could affect us. Can we move on now? Thank you again, by the way, Raina, for what you're doing. It's important not to assume that you already know what people think. Sometimes when we're sitting thinking about designing a course at our university anyway, I get frustrated because we are sitting in an office in a university saying, well, we think the course should have this or that in it, without going out to ask the people that we want to take the course what they think they need to learn. Sometimes they don't know, but we shouldn't assume that we do. We should talk to the people who ultimately are going to employ the graduates from our programs. So I like this quote here. If you want to understand how a lion hunts, don't go to the zoo, go to the jungle. Let's move on, please. So it's not just about getting attention. It is about keeping it long enough for some kind of influence to happen. Real behavior change is not easy, it's pretty tough. But often it is the result of a sequence of influential moments or exposures that lead a person along a certain path, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Next slide, please. What we're dealing with, of course, is the fact that all of us, both we ourselves and those that we're wanting to communicate with and influence, are creatures who are often less rational, less logical than we would like to think. People are driven by their perceptions, whether those perceptions are grounded in reality or not. The perceptions often mislead us and the audiences we want to influence, and we need to take into account what modern decision science says, which is that in order to make a good decision, you need more than just a rational assessment. You need to address people's emotions as well. Please move on. This is a kind of aspirational statement which says, although our attention spans are ever shortening, we should fight to create messages and environments that demand time, engagement, and reward. That is the way that ideally things should be. But the reality is that as our lives get busier and busier, we are less and less able to pay attention to those messages and environments that demand time, engagement, and reward. We should keep that goal in front of us, but also recognize the reality that we're dealing with. Let's kind of move on. Let's move on from that one to the next slide, please. I don't know if you heard about a thing called information foraging theory. What information foraging theory says is that in digital environments, humans follow similar strategies as wild animals to get the information that they want. And there's a concept called information prey. So imagine that you're wanting to research whether a particular medication that you've come across, one that seems like it will help you with a particular condition that you have, you want to find out more information about it. Is it safe? Is it available in my country? And so on. If you go looking, and this is your information prey, what you're looking for, information that will help to build your understanding and help you respond to your own questions, then you will, like the lion in the jungle or on the savannah is there, you'll be looking for cues. You'll be looking for scent. And there's a concept called information scent. And if those cues and that scent are not there, then you will make, like the lion, a rational decision to take a different path. And as I've said before, that is often very quick. So how can we deal with that? Next slide, please. We're in an environment where people typically, and I'm sure it's no different in Indonesia, pull information to themselves rather than being passive recipients of information that is pushed to them. So what we need to do is to lay a trail for the longer form content we want people to consume, a trail of what some marketers call snackable content, small bites of information that will draw people towards what we really want them to get to, their information prey, but the information prey that we want to use to influence them. That could be a blog post, it could be an image, it could be a short TikTok video, it could be a bunch of things, but laying that trail for people to follow so that we are drawing them along, not shoving information at them and expecting them willy-nilly to follow it. Let's go into the next sequence of slides. I hope I'm managing to keep you interested. So this bit is about COVID's effect on attention, and my assessment at this stage is that doing things on Zoom is here to stay. What we are seeing is a dramatic and longer term effect on the way that work is done. The use of digital platforms is speeding up, it's accelerating. Again, I'm sure that that is true of Indonesia as it is here. And when you are face to face with someone, you're better able to communicate often because you can get verbal or visual cues from the person that you are across a table from. It is difficult. It is difficult to communicate, or more difficult to communicate, without all the cues that we get from face-to-face interaction. Could you excuse me just one moment? I thought I'd stopped that call. Hello, I'm sorry, I have to call you back. So one of the other things that we need to do is to make our messaging short and targeted. This is a model of something called the message house. And it's something that I recommend to people. It means it's a simple way of structuring messaging where you have an overall statement, such as Malang is where you want to be if you want top-level university study. Then you unpack that umbrella statement with 3 core messages, and you support those messages with evidence, proof points, stories. I've used that in a number of ways and recommended it to others, and I think it's very helpful. Next slide, please. Now, I don't know how strong TikTok is in Indonesia. There are even songs written about TikToking and short videos. It's not the right answer for us always, but its short form format is absolutely right for the times for when people are facing this poverty of attention. Please move on. Why is that important? Let's move to the next slide. It's because when people are stressed, angry, or upset, and we know this can be the case, for example, when people are dealing with natural disasters, which I know that Indonesia, as well as New Zealand, is subject to from time to time. Their ability to hear, remember, and understand information can be degraded by up to 80%. So they just will not absorb complicated messaging. That is why we need simple structures. Simple, but not necessarily simplistic. Please move on. So here's an infographic that I don't expect you to see very well on the screen at the moment, but my sense is that if people are suffering from what's now called COVID stress syndrome, they may actually misinterpret messages or ignore them as they struggle with just simply surviving. And these are all factors that I believe in a COVID chaotic world we need to take into account when we're thinking about how to reach people effectively. Next message, please. Now, in English, I don't know whether you have an equivalent in Indonesian, we have a phrase, getting your ducks in a row, and that just means getting everything well organized. But, and this comes back to knowing your audience, you may have, you think, everything organized, but you need to remember that your audiences are humans who may reject your messaging because of something you didn't identify, because you didn't do your groundwork as thoroughly as you could have done in terms of knowing your audience. Please move on. Now, there's a thing called the rule of 3. And in fact, the brain seems to work best thinking in 3s, which is why, in our country at least, voicemail access codes are 3 digits, and the security code on the back of your Visa card or MasterCard or other bank card is just 3 digits as well. It's been shown that if you add a 4th digit, recall falls off. Please move on. So our messages need to be simple, appealing, unexpected, as I said before, credible and emotional. One of the things that has helped us here in New Zealand in terms of government COVID messaging is that they have often been delivered, their messages have often been delivered by a combination of our Prime Minister and by our Director General of Health. The Director General of Health is seen to be a very calm, level-headed person who has developed great credibility through demonstrating those qualities in his messaging about the virus. And don't forget the emotional thing. Often we might tend to make an emotionally based or intuitive response to something which we then later rationalize with our thinking faculties. Let's move on. Nudging is a concept that is used when talking about behavior change. Let's say you want to encourage people to eat more healthy food. A nudge is something like making the healthy food easy to pick up in a cafe, and the less healthy things, put them further out of reach. It's a small thing. Let's move on. Now, one of the things that happens is that when people resist our attempt at persuasion, we often look, as I term it, for a bigger hammer. In other words, we want to hit them harder with our messaging. We think that if we just ramp up the messaging, we will finally get our result. And often that's not the case. What we really need to do is to look for what are the roadblocks that are preventing people absorbing and accepting our messaging, and deal with those if we can. Please move on. Of course, everybody talks about fake news, disinformation, misinformation, and those are subjects that I'm seriously interested in. And one of the things I know is that facts alone are not enough to deal with misinformation. We need to drill down through qualitative and sometimes quantitative research to find out why people are emotionally attached to things, ideas that are just plain wrong. And this becomes, of course, particularly important and even literally a matter of life or death when we're talking about COVID. Please move on. So I would encourage you, when you think about your communication, to be creative and bold. I very much like this creative picture of a large male lion. Next slide, please. So terima kasih, thank you, but next slide. There's a question about how, in this kind of environment that I've been talking about, a university can stand out and build its reputation. I'm happy to talk more about reputation because that's one of the key areas that I focus on. But let's move to the next slide. It's a matter of reputation. And reputation, standing out from the rest, is a matter of proving trustworthy over time, not just a matter of pumping out promotion and promotional messages. It takes roughly 2 years to embed a given reputation in somebody's mind, which is why it is actually rare for a reputation to be destroyed overnight. Reputation is what people think and say about you. There is no direct research-based evidence to link good financial performance with good reputation. But there is a research-based link between a good reputation and purchase decisions, which is why a university's reputation and a university that stands out from the others has an advantage. Reputation is always something that is determined in relation to someone or something else, and in this case with competitors. Next slide, please. Independent endorsements, such as in the communication area, endorsement of the Association for Education in Journalism and Mass Communication, AEJMC, certainly helps in building a university's reputation, but perhaps not necessarily in the way that you might think. Let's move to the next slide. They help not only by showing that you've received an international endorsement, but because they force you to ensure all of your teaching, that is your pedagogy, your policies and practices, meet international quality benchmarks. And I believe that this process can be even more important than whatever recruitment payoff you get by being able to say that your university is endorsed or accredited by a particular accrediting institution. Please move to the next slide. There's the flag, and if you have questions or comments, I'm ready, and I do thank you again for the opportunity to share with you. I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to Pierre, and I hope to continue to do that and continue to build a relationship. But when COVID permits, to come and see what I understand is a very beautiful city of Malang, and go from there. So I'm open to any comments, questions that you may have, and thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Chris Galloway, for the presentation and insightful slides. I love the colorful slides.
Thank you.
Okay, I saw that you managed to Google about Kampung Warna-Warni in
I did.
Malang. Yes, I hope you can come to Indonesia. Okay.
I'm very much hoping to do that, by the way.
Yeah. Before we jump into the discussion session, I took some notes regarding our topic today. We mainly discuss about the COVID effects on attention and what all this means for messaging and how to deal with resistant roadblocks and how can universities stand out in this environment. I'm interested with the statement, how long is your attention span? Minutes or second? And I also agree that this span is depend on what you are doing, your activity while you are hanging out with friends, searching on Instagram, updating your Facebook status, and then posting on Twitter, because as we all know, we have a term, a filter bubble. I'm sure that you already know about that. What we do, what we consume on social media will affect the attention span. And the second one is our messages in this era should be simple, appealing, unexpected. This is the critical point, and then credible and emotional. I think this 5 content of messages is belongs to TikTok, I think, because they are unexpected and emotional and appealing. Anyone in this room, if you want to discuss more about TikTok, it is welcome. You can question, comments, anything. And I also agree that the facts alone are not enough to deal with this misinformation era in this pandemic COVID-19. But I'm sure that in New Zealand, you are in Auckland, right? I think the condition is quite manageable compared to Indonesia.
Well, in our case, Auckland is still in lockdown because we had a family where one of the members of the family went for a COVID test, and then he went straight to the gym, and then he went to various other places when he should have been isolating. And the result was to spread infection. So our city has been in lockdown for 7 days. We're hoping that'll be lifted tomorrow. The rest of the country is in a less severe lockdown, but we have police checkpoints at all the main roads in and out of Auckland, which is a city of over 1 million people, and causing all kinds of problems. I'm not sure about Indonesia, but once you get everybody vaccinated in Malang, I'm coming to buy a few batik shirts.
Okay. So there is still a curfew in Auckland until today?
There is no curfew, but some businesses will be closed. Many businesses will be closed. Where I can still get something like a takeaway coffee, but it has to be done in a contactless way. So I cannot go in and sit down in a coffee place and drink my coffee. I have to be handed it and go somewhere else to drink it.
Okay, I see. So I think we will start to open a discussion session. If anyone interested to comments or question or have discussion with Dr. Galloway, we are very welcome. Okay, there is
the brain works best in threes. Thank you for that question.
There is a question in the chat box. I will read it for you. From Nicholas David. Okay, you can, if you want to ask directly to Dr. Galloway, is okay? Or
yeah.
I just read your comments.
Yep. Look,
okay.
That is not to say that, for example, an academic paper should have only 3 sections. What it is saying is that if you want a message to the general population to be memorable, structure it around 3 key messages, because that way it will be more memorable and is more likely, therefore, to have a greater effect. As I say, this is based on research that suggests that this is how our brains are structured. And if you Google the rule of 3, you'll find out more information about it. I hope that helps.
Okay, Nico, is it clear for you, or you want to ask more?
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. The other, maybe if you have comments or question, Pia, please do.
Okay, thank you, Ibu Isma. Grace, I would like to ask you about why the international accreditation such as CGMC is very important for the university and students.
Right.
And can you tell me what is the benefit if we got the international accreditation instead of being verified that we are in a very good quality or following their standards? Thank you, Chris.
Welcome. I don't know how to say welcome in Indonesian yet, but I'm sure you will teach me, Pierre. I think it's important not to underestimate the fact that you will only get the accreditation if your programs are seen to meet international benchmarks or international standards. But my experience would be that when you are doing student recruitment, this is something that people will look at and tick a mental box and say, yep, their programs are endorsed by a prestigious international accrediting group. And it is one way of doing what we've been talking about, which is standing out. I understand that there are many universities in Malang. If Brawijaya has this accreditation, it will be yet another way of making the university stand out from the competitors around. Now I'm seeing another question. How does the international actually view the impact of this COVID? Is it true that there is and I'm missing the rest of that sentence there. Could that person just expand on the question, please?
Pardon, Mr. Chris?
There was a question on the chat facility that ended with an incomplete. Oh, I see. Tina, is it true that there is a business element in marketing vaccines, so society will depend on developed countries in the economic field? Undoubtedly, there is a business element in marketing vaccines, even though the UN has called on vaccines to be made freely available around the world. What I read today was that Cuba, for example, is developing its own vaccine because it doesn't want to be dependent on other countries. And we know that Cuba has a robust and very effective health system. There's also something that's been called vaccine nationalism, with countries trying to secure vaccines for their own population ahead of those in other countries. We also see in the Middle East the Zionist entity promising only, at the latest count, 22,000 vaccines for the Gaza Strip, when that very congested piece of land, which I have visited, contains about 2 million people, so it's a drop in a bucket. My own view, I mean, people talk about COVID, the period after COVID, as being a quote unquote new normal. Personally, I don't believe there is or will be such a thing, because normal implies some kind of stability, even in altered circumstances. And I think we are in for even more unstable and uncertain times than we've experienced in recent years. I hope that helps to answer the question.
Okay, thank you, Pak Arif, for the question, and Mr. Galloway for answering it. Is there any other question or maybe discussion related to the materials or maybe the main topic about COVID-19? You can raise, push the button on raise hand.
So one more time, Ibu Isma. So Chris, so if so now, because of the situation that depend on the digital technology, does university need to be stand out by getting the international accreditation? But interestingly, in some of university in Japan, they don't really care about the accreditation, but they really care about how they can run the university by a very good system according to their system, of course.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this? So because sometimes there is some criticism or international accreditation is just like a small business from Western country. At the same time, some many stakeholders still see or still regard that international accreditation is very important for the university to get knowledge and to get, to can be stand out in the very crowd, university competition in the world. What do you think, Chris?
I think it's both. I think accreditation is part of a bigger picture that you could call reputation, as I was talking about before. And the international accreditation is one way of helping to do that. It's not the only way, but it is an important element in that. Now, having good systems, having, Brawijaya has a good reputation. We have an lovely Indonesian person who works in our Pro Vice Chancellor's office. I've talked to her about my contact with you and about the university. She said, oh, Brawijaya, good university. So you already have a good reputation, at least in this part of the world.
Thank you so much, Chris, for your explanation. That means that I think our department is on the track because we are heading to the international accreditation ACGMC very soon. And hopefully your presence in University of Brawijaya when the COVID is going to be gone, we are very pleased to welcome you to Brawijaya and being our mentor for applying the very high reputation international accreditation.
You know, I'm very keen to do that. Sooner rather than later is good. So I hope there will soon be an opportunity to come and introduce myself to you personally. And I would recommend to any organization of some size that they have a reputation management plan. Reputation is not something that can be taken for granted. In fact, your reputation can not only build over time, but also decay over time. And often, unless you're monitoring your standing with the stakeholders who matter most to you, you don't pick it up. It can be like decay in a tooth that you don't know is there until you bite on something hard and you feel a stab of pain and you think, oh, I better go to the dentist. So universities and large organizations, of course, try to manage risk. Reputation risk is one of those areas that should be managed along with more tangible risks. And this is one of the areas that I like to play in. I would have more thoughts to offer if they would be helpful in a separate discussion.
Thank you, Chris. So I think, Ibu Isma, I think we have Pak Iwan Nur Hadi here.
Yes.
He's a sociologist. Is my best colleague is in this faculty. So I would like to invite Pak Iwan to give some comments regarding the phenomenon of the society of our people in Indonesia, especially during the COVID-19, using the digital technology, how the people do now and regard all of this, Pak Iwan. Pak Iwan, are you there?
Thank you, Mbak Pia. But I will deliver in Bahasa maybe.
Okay, I'll let Ibu Isma translate for you.
Yeah. Terima kasih banyak untuk kesempatannya. Situasi sekarang yang saya pahami sih barangkali karena studi saya banyak di pedesaan, yang terjadi adalah digital divided gitu ya. Terutama sekali karena saya concern dengan isu pariwisata di pedesaan begitu ya, rural tourism. Yang terjadi memang kemudian akses itu berbeda dan menarik sekali barangkali mendengar dan melihat pemaparan dari pemapar hari ini. Saya kira itu sangat insightful. Bagaimana kemudian dalam dunia pariwisata mungkin juga terjadi hal yang sama begitu ya. Pesan yang padat, singkat tapi betul-betul mengena, dan yang paling penting adalah pesannya dapat begitu ya. Nah, saya ingin komen juga barangkali dari pemerasaran hari ini pada seberapa jauh kira-kira di dunia, katakanlah di masyarakat rural, situasi-situasi yang disruptif ini terjadi. Selain pembacaan saya yang tadi barangkali sangat-sangat masih di permukaan. Itu saja barangkali. Terima kasih. Mudah-mudahan tidak terlalu sulit untuk diterjemahkan, Bu Isma.
Over to you, Mbak Isma.
Oke. Pak Iwan, yang terakhir tadi gimana Pak? Sejauh mana? How far?
Ya, how far disruptive situation termasuk COVID barangkali ya mempengaruhi masyarakat di pedesaan terutama barangkali yang terlibat dalam rural tourism seperti itu ya. Saya kira mungkin itu.
So how far disrupted situation?
Mohon maaf kalau out of context, tapi pemahaman saya soal digital, society dan sebagainya juga sangat terbatas. Terima kasih.
Oke. Terima kasih Pak Iwan. So I will try to translate from Pak Iwan's comments and question. Pak Iwan have one question for Dr. Galloway. So Pak Iwan is now doing his doctoral in IPB Bogor. His concern is about the rural tourism. So in a village rural tourism, and he asked you. How far this condition, the disruptive condition, this situation will impact it to the rural area?
I think that's a difficult and complex question to answer, and I don't know the situation in Indonesia in the rural areas. What I do know is in New Zealand, for example, with our borders essentially closed, there has been a large marketing program from the government and other bodies to encourage people to take holidays at home. So there has been a big boom in domestic tourism. But at the same time, we have seen delays in supply chains of products from overseas to New Zealand, ships kind of piling up at our major ports, some supermarkets and other retailers not being able to get product. And this is put down to delays caused by the impact of COVID on overseas supply. But in our own rural areas, there have been difficulties getting products to market. The government has provided lots of financial support, but tourism to rural areas in some cases is down about 90%. There's been a very heavy impact. For this country, it used to be that our number one export was primary products like meat and dairy and wool and so on. Before COVID, it was tourism. And I know that places like Bali and also Malang are very popular tourist spots. So I assume that you've been hit hard, but in our case, there is a made-up word that I like to use called Uber expectation. If you give people some money and say, here, this is to help you out, they'll always say it's not enough. And so we have some of that as well.
Okay. So I think what happened in Indonesia is quite the same. We've been hit so hard with this situation, not only in urban but rural area. Pak Iwan, is there any other question or response?
Iya, terima kasih Isma. Saya mungkin ingin merespon pernyataan Pak Kris. Ada beberapa inovasi terkait dengan tourism di masa pandemik ini melalui virtual tourism. Nah, apakah kemudian itu sedemikian mudah atau sudah diaplikasikankah dalam pariwisata pada konteks New Zealand misalnya? Dan bagaimana kemudian Indonesia bisa belajar dari situasi-situasi yang dihadapi di sana? Itu barangkali.
Okay, so here's the response from Mr. Iwan Nurhadi. There is a innovation. It is called the virtual tourism. As far as I know, it is already implemented in Singapore.
Right.
Does this innovation is also done in New Zealand, and how people in New Zealand done this?
Okay, I'm not sure that I fully grasp the question, but one of the things that we are seeing in our own technology sector is a lot of innovation to do with managing COVID, for example, and reducing risk. But can I suggest that if our colleague wants to email me his questions separately, I will respond separately and try and connect him with people at Massey who may be able to help him with his research project.
Okay. So it will continue later about the discussion.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to interact by email, Skype, or WhatsApp with people who want to have further discussion.
Okay. So Pak Iwan, mungkin diskusinya akan dilanjut by email. Ada beberapa di Massey University yang sudah conducted hal yang sama, mungkin bisa berlanjut di korespondensi email. Kira-kira begitu.
Thank you very much, Isma, Pak Kris. Thank you very much, and also thank you very much for your offer.
You're welcome.
Bu Isma, kalau sedikit saya boleh komentar, if I may give some comments to Pak Iwan regarding rural tourism. So Pak Iwan, the big challenge is that how we can make the people in the rural area very literate with digital technology. Some people still, have a difficulty how to do or to make some video or make some simple storytelling in the Instagram. So I think the big challenge for us in education area, or maybe we can do some community program for them, that we can give them some training session regarding how they can use some application in their mobile phone, and then we can educate them how to make a beautiful photo about their village, and then how they can make a story, because nowadays, Pak Iwan, in communication we have the power of storytelling. So the more the story that you give to the people about your village, about the beauty of your village, the more people want to come, or at least the more people want to see or to watch the video. So I think nowadays, Pak Iwan, we depends on the social media, of course. I think so many platforms that we can use, even though only small TikTok video, sometimes people get misunderstand about the TikTok. Sometimes TikTok only used for dancing, a silly move or silly face or something stupid. But using some application like TikTok also can encourage people to, for example, Pak, you can shoot a little activity in the village, like for example, planting rice, that maybe some Western want to know about how the planting rice, or maybe another system of, like organic vegetables using the small backyard or something like that. I think that's very interesting, Pak Iwan. And I think we can talk, because I also concerned about how we can develop rural tourism, especially how they can empower their natural resources, Pak Iwan, to become the object of tourism in their area. My I think last 2 years project, because I try to empower the people in the little village in Blitar residence, Chris. So they have 5 springs, natural water in their village, and I asked them to empower their spring water to become a swimming pool or water park area, and then one spring for commercialization. So like provide drink water, something like that, and then they have to preserve other 3 spring waters. So they will impact on their economy, of course. Well, the water park is not, you know, like not sophisticated like in the town, but at least the people in the village surrounded in their area can feel and enjoy, you know, swimming from the fresh or spring water that are much cooler rather than, you know, sending like a artificial swimming pool in the town. So I think that's the interesting thing about the digital, no boundaries between rural and city anymore. Thank you. Back to you, Bu Isma.
Yeah.
I think I'll have to bring my swimming shorts when I come.
Yeah.
Of course.
Can I just mention one thing? I'm convinced that in order to achieve social change, it's important to have effective communication happening at the village level. I have been talking with people in an area of the Philippines called Samar, S-A-M-A-R. And this is a part of the Philippines that gets up to 20 cyclones coming through a year. But they've said to me, we don't get any disaster risk communication from the city government. And so we're looking at how to reach people in the villages. And one of the things that they have told me is that there's a 90% penetration of mobile phones. Not all of them, of course, are smartphones. Some of them are the old basic Nokia type, but I believe it's possible to do some effective messaging via texts that are planned and sent out that even someone on an old Nokia phone can pick up and apply. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galloway, and also Bu Pia for the very insightful discussion. I also remember that when Bu Pia mentioned we should educate or give education about literacy on the one who live in a village, I think our university already supported with a certain sim, just like Dr. Mangabdi. We could do much with that community service. So I think the people from rural area will get help and educated. And I like the idea about using social media to functionalize the springs on Blitar. I think it's a brilliant idea, Bu Pia. I hope the project will continue. Okay, is there any other question? Okay, from Bu Megasari. This is from another university. She joined, asked me through the chat. Okay, he said that may I ask to Dr. Hallway through the chat box if it's possible. Okay, Bu Megasari, you can ask directly to the Dr. Hallway.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Isma. Well, good afternoon, Bu Pia and Dr. Galloway. Nice to join with this event.
Welcome.
Yeah, your presentation is very interesting because I think when we talk about community service, especially now I'm working in a what kind of like university that produce a teacher, so we have to think more sophisticated about education in digital life. We have some kind of like obstacle. The real obstacle now is how to motivate the teacher with the range age like 50 years above, because they are not a digital native like us.
No.
So maybe you don't, you know, the in New Zealand maybe the government or the Ministry of Education have a like a practical strategy to motivate the teacher or also the student also, because we have a really the real obstacle in front of us about the digital because of the pandemic effect. Thank you.
First of all, some research has been done at another university in my city showing that students are not as competent in dealing with technology as we might assume. At least the students that were surveyed there. We have the impression often that young students are very on top of the technology. What this research project showed was that that's not always the case. In New Zealand, when we're not locked down, libraries, public libraries, are a centre for not only lending books, but for community events such as training in using computers and that kind of thing. There are classes that older people can attend. Within the education system, I'm not quite sure what happens in the schools, but there are various training options that people can take. And our government made the first year of tertiary study free. So there are opportunities for people to get that upskilling. And I guess that there is also a thing that we have called the University of the Third Age, which is specifically for retired people and people like that. There are various training programs that can be offered through groups like that. But I agree with you, it can be a problem, but the reality also is that here we tend to assume that people of a certain age will not be good with technology. Often that is not actually the case. They will have at least a basic competence to be able to receive and send email, check news sites and do that sort of thing. So all I'm really saying is in our context, and it may well be very different in yours, we have to be wary of stereotyping people of certain age groups. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Galloway. Yeah, based on my latest research in my university, because I'm curious about how the digital well-being accepted by the student in the university. Most of them say that this program like education digital in pandemic era is not good as like before, like a face-to-face communication in class.
Yeah.
So they think that they want to come to class, they need to meet another friends because it impact to their psychologists also. So if it happened in Massey University also, Dr. Galloway?
Yes, it does. This is a problem not only here, but also elsewhere. I read a quote from somebody who was a student at Harvard University in the States saying, I didn't pay, I'm not paying $40,000 a year to sit at home getting remote learning. So I've also had students here say to me that they much prefer face-to-face. I prefer to teach face-to-face because apart from anything else, I kind of work off the classroom and I look at the cues that I'm receiving from the students and try to adapt my style to what they are conveying, whether they're speaking or just doing it by body language. And so, although my university pushes strongly the idea of digital education, partly because the authorities there seem to believe that digital is the way of the future, but also I think because it's possibly a less costly way of providing educational services. I hope that helps, and if you would like to talk more, I'm more than happy to email with you or have a separate online chat.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Galloway, and thank you, Mbak Isma and Bu Pia for this chance.
You're welcome, Mbak Mega. If I may say some comment regarding that matters. So I think the big mistake in our country that we what is that recklessly not thinking that the number of our credit system is too much for the students for taken in the online teaching and learning system. In Australia, I believe that only 4 courses offered in online system. But in Indonesia, you can imagine, Chris, we have 8 courses in the semester. So I think there are some misunderstanding about the philosophy of online teaching and learning. It's not just about moving in the digital platform. And then sharing all the courses within one semester. Like for example, we have 8 courses. You can imagine 8 courses in one semester through online teaching and learning system. It is very hard. That's our mistake. And hopefully in the future, if we still have to run the online teaching and learning, we have to change the credit system in our education system, especially for the higher education. At least only maximum is 12 credits, or maybe 4 courses in a semester, and minimum of 2 courses in a semester. So it can help the student psychology, also for the lecturer. Actually, Chris, I'm very, very exhausted to run 5 courses in a semester, because you can imagine how desperately I am if I have to spend more time in preparing everything, because online courses, Mbak Mega, is has to be thoughtful. It means that you have to be careful in sending everything, like a course material, and then the video, and then the reading resources that you put in the like what is that, Moodle, or we have in Brawijaya VLM, virtual learning management. If in Australia or New Zealand they're using Blackboard. Am I right, Chris?
Yes, in Australia I use Blackboard, but in Massey we use a custom version of Moodle called Stream.
Yes, same like in Brawijaya. So I think also has very sophisticated platform as well. But it's not just only making a video about 15 minutes. I think our students nowadays getting more tired and tired sitting down in the front of computer. And believe me, Mbak Mega, you're getting more older if you will sit at the front of the computer more than 8 hours per day. You will find your face full of wrinkles, okay? That's my comment. Back to you, Mbak Isma.
Thank you, Miss Piat.
And I think we need more retinol serum, right, Bubia?
Oh, more than retinol serum. It's every serum you can put on your face.
Okay, to delay the aging. Okay, it's very enjoyable and insightful discussion from Mbak Mega, or I used to call her Mbak Meme. Is there any other question or discussion related to these issues? Okay, I think I take that as a no. Maybe I will just summarize shortly about the today's general lecture that taken from the slides that Dr. Galloway has presented. If the facts alone are not enough to deal with this misinformation, and if the audiences are suffering from COVID stress syndrome, they may misinterpret message, forget or ignore them as they struggle with multiple issues. And about how the university standing out from the rest is matter of proving trustworthy over time, not just the promotion. Yeah. So before I get back to Raina, if it's possible, please do turn on your camera. We will have photo session virtually, of course. After this, okay, thank you. We'll get back to you, Raina, to conduct this photo session.
Okay, so thank you, Mrs. Isma. And of course, Mr. Chris. I will say that I really enjoyed the discussion, and thank you so much. And I so surprised about the presentation because I never had such a presentation, like really colorful and really interesting. So thank you so much.
Terima kasih.
All right. I think that we've had a productive and inspiring time together. And this event is about to end, but I hope that you found the presentation on this event are informative and helpful. Before we close this event, I will take a picture of all of us. There is 3 pages, right? Okay. So I will take, okay. So Mrs. Isma, can you help me for taking a picture?
Okay, please count 1, 2, 3, Raina. I will take the picture.
Okay. This is the first page. Okay. Don't forget to smile. 1, 2, 3. Okay. That's it.
The second page.
Oh, the second page. Okay. Okay, the second page. 1, 2, 3.
The third one.
Third one.
The last one.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, finally we get to the last session. As the master of ceremony today, I would like to say thank you once again to Mr. Christopher Galloway as a speaker and Ms. Isma Adila as a moderator, and of course the audience entirely. May what we had conducted will be useful for us. Now I'm Rana Sesin and I'll see you soon on the next event. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you so much, Raina, for your help, and thank you so much, Ibu Isma and other my beloved colleagues in University of Brawijaya for making this event happen. And thank you again. It's a great honor for us to have you today, Dr. Galloway, for sharing with us about your knowledge regarding how we can stand out in the digital and the crowded era in this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much. Terima
Thank you
kasih.
so much.
Pak.
Terima
Terima
kasih.
kasih buat semua teman-teman mahasiswa.
And
Terima
Pierre,
kasih yang hadir.
I will talk to you shortly. I will talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Terima
Bye.
kasih.
Terima kasih.
Pak Pia, Pak Kris, Isma juga. Oh, Mbak Raina juga, terima kasih. Pamit dulu.